Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bulletproof Dental Practice Podcast. Today I'm flying solo and I'm going to do something that I've been wanting to do for a couple of years now and draw kind of a parallel to a popular book that's out there. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you're already seeing the book that's on the screen. And I'll give a little wind up to this, why I think it's a really good book. So years ago, I went to a YPO conference, and this was on mergers and acquisitions, and everyone around, various business leaders went around the table, and they were all respective leaders. And, one was in farming and one was in electronics and one was in AI and one, anyway. And the question came up, what has been the most impactful uh, book for your business? And without fail, like 4 of the 8 people said Traction by Gino Wickman. And honestly, I felt super vulnerable because I didn't know at the time what this book was. And I was like, wait, what is this book you guys are saying? And so those of you who have been exposed to it are shaking your head like, duh, but basically Gino Wickman has this book called Traction, and it is agnostic to business, meaning, it applies to all businesses, obviously. And what it's known for is the EOS system, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. Dwight and I used to talk about this book all the time, and basically, as I read it and went through it, and I've gone through it many times, there was such parallel, I thought, to the Bulletproof Pathway, which obviously has high specificity to the dental practice. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to kind of go through what his core principles are, and then how they apply to dentistry, kind of interlinked with the pathway a little bit and how it kind of covers that. And Craig and I contend that the Bulletproof Pathway, regardless of where you are in your scope of business, whether it's startup, mature, growing, wherever, you're kind of always going through the pathway. You're creating new vision, and you're building, and you're getting the right people. And so I'm going to kind of look at this as Gino Wickman's pathway here. I'm sorry, EOS. So the 6 components to his EOS system, and his overarching thesis is this: that entrepreneurs don't need more ideas, they don't need more distractions, they just need more structure to their business, right? Because we operate in this state of chaos a lot. And I think as coaching a lot of dentists, and going through it myself, that chaos is a large part of what we do, right? We get out of dental school and we hit the ground running, and we really don't know. We're just kind of running as far away and as fast as we can away from that era of having no money out of dental school, and and we have our student loans coming, and now we have to hire people and do payroll and all these things. So anyway, we're running. And a lot of times we're doing well despite ourselves, because we wake up one day and we're like, holy shit, I am actually in a business. I've created a business without really knowing, or I have a practice really without knowing the planning for that. And everyone understands kind of what I'm talking about when I say that. So anyway, back to Gino's thesis is that we need more structure. So in dentistry, right, we typically don't lack the passion for what we do. We lack predictable systems. And like I said earlier, we build businesses by accident, right? And so the EOS provides an operating system that allows dentists to lead on purpose. So they break theirs down. So the Bulletproof Pathway has 12 kind of steps or 12 components. And Gino Wickman's kind of pie chart here you're looking at is 6. It's broken down into 6 sections. So one is the vision. He starts with vision. And there's a lot of questions around that, which is something we, as in a new mastermind, we are working on right now. And it's just so powerful. And sometimes people, and I'm guilty of this, they blow this section off in the beginning, thinking that this doesn't matter. Like, show me the marketing, show me how to hire, show me how to create systems, all these things. But without clarity, like, you're just operating like in chaos. And so we spend a lot of time on this vision because it interweaves into all the things we do. And ironically, so does the EOS system. The next thing he has is kind of data, right, where you have scorecards and measurables. After that, it's creating a process that are documented and followed by all. This is the SOPs that everyone hears about and we throw around a lot. There's people, or the right people, seats. There's issues, like how are you treating issues and problems in your business? Because again, this is just for all business. And then the traction of this. Okay. So let me go and then so here's the bulletproof pathway, right? We start with me, and then we go into vision, and then build, marketing, enroll, retain, recapture, refer, measure, and then at the end there's fulfillment. Okay. So the traction as it relates in dentistry is this. So the EOS component would be vision, and the bulletproof pathway is we have visioneering. And so the dental application to this is that you spend a lot of time thinking about the practice you want, right? Clarity around what it looks like, clarity around what it feels like, clarity around, the freedom. We talk about dentistry has the tons of freedom associated with the job, right? Do you want to optimize your practice for scale or real estate, or you want to optimize for time, or do you want to optimize for impact, or you want to anything you can do, right? So, but that's all part of the vision. And a lot of us, Craig and I have been talking a lot about this lost decade. A lot of us haven't spent enough time with ourselves post dental school. Like I said earlier, we just get out and we start sprinting, and then we kind of pick our heads up 10 years later and be like, hey, I'm really not happy, and my shoulder's kind of hurting a little bit, and I've got some pain, and I'm not really feeling fulfilled. And we kind of wake up like, oh shit, I don't want to do it this way for the next 30 or 20 years. So we see vision clarity happening with people kind of in their late 30s, late 40s kind of thing in dentistry, saying like, man, I kind of just ran towards a goal, right? So the vision's a big part. The people, as we know, people are the biggest expenditure, the biggest investment on your P&L. I don't want to say, I shouldn't say expense, because truly, like, people are the leverage in your practice, right? And we always talk about Naval and creating leverage, but when you have a business, the people are your leverage. And I don't mean leverage in a manipulative way. I mean leverage in the fact that Craig is the example. Like, your CT scan can't take a better CT, but your people can be optimized to create better outcomes, create better experience for your patient, take some things off your plate if you're good at kind of delegating, not abdicating. And so the people are, so we use Culture Index a lot for this, right? To find that the right people are on the right seats in the bus with key roles in our practice. The next thing is data, right? So data is really just a measurement of our practice stuff. So, we have the Bulletproof KPIs, which talks about, average production per patient visit and reappointment rates and, new patient net growth, things like this. And Craig and I contend that in a sea of, you could make up any kind of KPI that you wanted. In a sea of KPIs, those are the barometers for how your practice is going to be doing, especially the reappoint and pre-appoint rates for your practice. Issues is a big thing we learn about, and I think dentists are notorious. I throw myself in that bucket. Is when there's a problem, sometimes we just put our head down and think that it'll go away or it'll solve itself. So what he talks about in EOS is a system called IDS, which is identify the problem, define, and then solve, or delegate and solve. Maybe I'm getting that a little bit mixed up. But the IDS system helps you really put clarity around the outcome. And so what I mean by this is, if there's an issue, right, there should be meetings set up to address this. So this is the leadership meeting that you hear about, or Craig and I talk about, or when Erica's on the pod. These leadership meetings, the people who can enact change should be in there. So they should bring an issue of the practice to the meeting, and by the end there should be an agreement, right? The consensus of how we solve it, right? Because when people weigh in, they buy in to the solution. Okay. So I think these are really important. Always be looking for the problem to solve. And, as we've discussed in the past, happy practice is not the absence of problems. It's just better quality problems, as it also that relates to your life. Okay. The next thing is your processes, right? And so many people they think that a office manual is an SOP or a process, and it's really not. Of those of you who have made one, you know, and spent pouring in hours and hours of time, and it's the most beautiful thing on the planet, and you get it printed and put it in a binder, and it goes on a shelf, and no one ever looks at it again, you know, and so you're like, no one cares. But systems are better for this, meaning there's better systems for a system. And what I mean by this is things like Trainual, like evergreen documents, evergreen processes, right? Step-by-step processes that standardize the patient journey, the way you handle calls, the way you handle missed calls. Like there is a process to everything so that everyone is crystal clear on the way that you play the game. And that happens with your clinical, that happens with, mainly your patient experience. And as we know, the patient experience is a long pipeline. It starts with your marketing and ends with kind of the post-op call, and then kind of re-encourages by the reappointments and things like that. And then lastly is the traction. So the traction is, as it relates to the BP pathway, is kind of the fulfillment, the wealth, the rhythm of what you're doing in your life, right? Are you gaining traction? Do things feel better? And I was actually sitting with the CEO of Atlanta Dental Spa, Dr. Drew King, yesterday in a meeting, just kind of talking about the vision and talking about some of the issues and how we're going to solve, right? Again, a very strategic meeting. And we were looking back at like some of the problems that existed just 12 months ago. And if someone were to tell me, right, 12 months ago that these things would be not only fixed but optimized in a short 12 months from then, I would have been like, there's no way. So never underestimate, right? Never underestimate the power to just kind of start identifying your problems, start creating traction in your practice. And I think it will create a lot of fulfillment. I see this time and time again with people once they start getting their hands wrapped around things and getting involved, that there's a lot of purpose and fulfillment. And actually, Drew said the same thing. He's like, dude, I have so much purpose right now, because he's charging down the field. So again, this is going to be a short pod. It's really just to say that, and look, this book is highly recommended. And I'm not advocating that everyone says, oh, we just adopt Bulletproof Pathway in all of dentistry, because it might not be a good fit. I think the power of things like a pathway or an EOS or maybe there's some other systems is that you're just creating awareness to the things that should be at least audited and discussed with your team. And again, try not to be the lone wolf who's doing all this stuff by yourself, right? The nucleus of everything we talk about, no one understands. So a lot of dentists, unfortunately, are looking at these things and never sharing them with the team. For example, right? Oh, I have a vision. I know what I want to do. But if the team doesn't know where the touchdown is, right? What the goal line is, then you feel like you're operating in an echo chamber, right? And a lot of times this team, through lack of leadership and clarity, are highly underutilized in your practice, right? Their accelerator is only their gas pedal is only pushed 50%, which, back to my story about purpose, right? Giving people a ton of purpose means that they're fully optimized in what they do. They feel like they're really making impact. So who wins in that scenario? They win because they're super fulfilled, and you win because a lot more is being taken off your plate. There's an autonomous process going on. And then data, right? So a lot of dentists operate in a silo in data. We're just looking at our dental intel or practice by numbers or your practice management software, and you're just kind of doing it and looking at it. But we're never kind of creating a system around how to enact change from that data. And so many times we see this when we get a P&L, right? A P&L, we get it from our CPA. And what would we do? We open that PDF, we scroll to the bottom, and we look, did we make money or did we not? Right? Because we don't know the constituents of what got there. And then we actually have a little shame around, like, I don't know how to enact change. For example, if my marketing expenses are too high, I don't really know how to change things other than just call my marketing team and say, hey, stop spending as much money. But then if I do that, right, am I creating a counterproductive marketing strategy, right? Meaning if I'm taking fuel away from that, and that's just an example, being able to really be able to look at the data, enact change through either your P&L or your practice management software, and reverse engineer the change. That's where the power starts coming in. Issues, right? I talked about the issues of what most dentists do, or a lot of dentists do. Probably none of these BP dentists that are listening, but a lot of people, again, super guilty in my past of, there's an issue. Oh shit, let's just put my head down. Maybe it'll go away. Maybe this toxic employee will miraculously get better, or maybe our phone answering percentage, maybe that was just a blip. It was just this week because this person was out. Or maybe, maybe our marketing has gone down. It's just a blip. Or maybe, September. Let's just buy into that September. But instead, addressing the issues head on, identify the problems, and implement a solution proactively with the leaders who can enact change. Again, and most dentists don't have a process. They have a, hey, did you look at the manual, right, that I created that we dust off every quarter or every year and go through again? Or did you look at the SOP document that goes over that specific way of how we answer phones, that specific way of how we reappoint, that specific way of how we give a new patient a tour, right? Those are systems. And a lot of times, again, most dentists are guilty of not having traction or not feeling fulfilled because we're just operating in chaos. And chaos, you cannot scale, right? You have to have massive clarity around what you're doing in order to scale. In addition, you have to have awareness to a system like this, either EOS or Bulletproof or the combination. You just have to know, what does your entire ecosystem look like? What are the constituents of getting from A to B? So again, the purpose of this pod isn't to go into the granular, here's how. The purpose is, if you're listening to this and you're not on a daily looking at the macro, right? You're not looking at the 30,000 foot view of your practice. You're just kind of going into work, looking at your schedule, doing your schedule, going home kind of thing, which a lot of people do. But it is really important to zoom out, and this is the time. If you're a person listening to this and you're saying, hey, I want to work on my business, we hear this a lot. And then Craig and I will dive in with those people and say, what do you mean? What is work on your business? Well, I'm going to go in on Friday and do the payroll. Well, I'm going to go in on Friday and clean this, right? They think that that's working on your business. That's just an extension of working in your business. Working on your business is actually spending some time in these core principles of, evaluating the right people on the right seats. How's our data looking, right? What can I do to impact change if I don't know how to impact change, right? There's so many valuable tools that you can use now. Upload your P&L into an LLM, right, or a GPT. Upload a GPT or a Grok, right? Feed it full of data. Start having conversations about saying, hey, Grok, I really was never taught this. So can you ask me clarifying questions on how I connect change? Because my supplies are a harder thing to change. My supplies, let's say, are 8%, and I really need to get them to 6%. Can you give me some things that based on the corpus of data of the kind of the world, what has worked for other people? And just start having a dialogue, right? Start asking questions, start getting curious about how to make change. It's really powerful. I see this. I see, the GPTs and things like that really being effective in helping people get away from operating in silo, right? We have this lone wolf. We operate in silo. We just do things and we're our own confirmational biases. But sometimes like a GPT or a Grok, when you load it with data, you can have it be, you can have it kind of challenge you on things when you tell it to ask clarifying questions. So again, I'm all over the place with this. Again, in closing, my wish for this is, if you're hearing this and it's uncovering some vulnerabilities that you maybe feel as an owner, as a leader, as a dentist, then now's the time to just start unpacking it. Come to a summit and learn more about kind of what the Bulletproof Pathway is. read the book EOS, because I believe there is huge correlations between the pathway and the traction wheel. And that's it. We want everybody, Craig, and my dream is for everyone out there to become bulletproof. And what that means is a practice life that feels fulfilled, where you're making impact, where you're not vulnerable to the competition around you, right? Your team is happy and fulfilled, and your life just feels light, right? You've preserved all three currencies of your life, right? The time, emotion, and money. You feel optimized for that. Like, that's what we want when we define the term bulletproof. And I believe, right, these are the ways to get there, but it doesn't happen by mistake. It happens with you kind of digging it up, rolling your sleeves, and taking action on many core subjects. So that's it. Hope everyone has a blessed day, and we'll see you later.